What's up, guys? Today I want to talk to you about a technology and a trend sweeping the world. That technology and trend I'm speaking about is the proliferation and explosion of digital organizations on smart contract platforms like Ethereum. A little bit about me. My name is Conder. I'm a developer, agile coach, solutions architect with more than a decade experience in coaching teams and organizing IT programs. I've spent the last 18 months obsessively researching and studying and working in DAOs. I currently serve as the governance solution engineer at Bankless DAO and operate as function as a general operator across the ecosystem. So the thesis for my talk today is that we're at the very beginning of a new era of programmable organizations. These are organizations that don't use software to accelerate business. They are defined by it. Their structures, processes, resources, and agreements are defined by code and changed by updates to that code. This is a shift from software as a tool to software as the organizing and identifying principle of an organization. The example has been used by Vitalik Buterin and others of code at the center and people at the edges, rather than people at the center and code at the edges. To understand this not as just a novel new thing to do, but actually a progression in a historical sequence of events, we need to look at a little bit of history here. To go back to the beginning is to go back to the microprocessor. The microprocessor has ushered in an age of wonder and increasingly consumed disparate fields of knowledge, causing them all to fall within the domain of information technology. So much so that Andreessen Horowitz penned the famous quote in 2011 that software is eating the world. Now, one interesting consequence of this is that anytime a domain of knowledge falls within information technology, it begins to enjoy the privileges of accelerated and exponential returns, as articulated by Ray Kurzweil. So we have this incredible software demand. How do humans respond? Well, we need to up our supply. This happened in the 90s and in early 2000s with the creation and codification of Agile delivery methods. Humans had to speed up in response to the demand. And this happened through Agile. Agile is the rapid incremental delivery of user-facing value, and it's become the de facto standard for software delivery. It was built on extreme programming, Scrum, Kanban, Crystal, DSDM, and the whole drive behind it is let's release new software every 2 weeks. Now that time frame could be different, but the general idea is let's reduce our cycle times so that we are able to confirm or invalidate thesis that we have about users in the world. So rapid delivery. Well, this evolved some years later and gave birth to what we know now as DevOps. If Agile was the rapid creation, DevOps is the rapid and scaled delivery and distribution. The Agile movement could not deliver as fast as they wanted to unless they consumed the operations and infrastructure responsibilities associated with the applications they were building. This manifested as CI, CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery. And the results of this were that instead of creating new software every 2 weeks or new product increments, hundreds of deployments were made a day across possibly billions of versions of a piece of code. or a piece of an application. So we see a little bit that the snake is starting to eat its own tail. We began programming our operational processes as code itself, fundamentally what DevOps is. So this pattern in thinking manifests itself as everything is code. This is not just ops as code, but infrastructure as code, configuration as code, pipelines as code. Andreessen Horowitz' statement that software is eating the world is evolved and expanded to software is eating software. Software turns the whole world to software, then begins to consume itself. This is the foundation of everything is code. And so by intentionally directing and instantiating all activities as code, we get the advantages of all the tooling we have of software management and the expected returns of accelerated returns predicted by Ray Kurzweil. We get the advantages of repeatability, scalability, reduced risk, easier auditing, dependency management, and versioning. I hope you see where we're going and why we're going to get there. So we don't have to just think about science fiction. We do have a glimpse as to the power of this kind of thinking. Now, I'll remind you that organizations in code, they code their structures, processes, resources, and agreements as code. One thing we can look at to see the possible advantages of doing this is Jeff Bezos' API mandate of 2002. There's a very famous email that went out that said that teams could no longer coordinate through meetings, email, private APIs. All coordination and interface needed to happen through public-facing APIs, public documentation, and that anyone who didn't do this would be fired. Some people point to this as one of the biggest movements in API-first thinking. And many attribute this position as a leading cause of AWS's successes. Now, if you think about it, this was a foretaste of the organizations as code, because in one fell swoop, Jeff Bezos eliminated coordination. He didn't attempt to manage it through how we typically try to do, through longer meetings, more frequent meetings, more specialized roles, increased hierarchy. He did it by taking a step in the direction of org as code. Now, I would suggest to you that this is happening now and has skyrocketed over the past 18 months in the form of DAOs, or decentralized autonomous organizations. I believe DAOs are the first programmable organizations. These are the first truly digital organizations. And I think we can use Gnosis as a proxy and a similitude for a business bank account. If a traditional organization incorporates with the state, as a legal entity, and then they do that in order to open a business bank account, the parallel with a pure digital organization is a multi-signature smart contract that requires X number of signatures on it to move funds. Now, Gnosis Safe is the biggest name in that right now, and you can see on these charts what's happened over the past 18 months. Over 93,000 safes created, and look at the transactions, 765,000 transactions, and this is not slowing, it's accelerating very fast, very rapidly. Gnosis Safe is now managing over 40 billion in digital assets and has received more than 2.3 billion in deposits over the course of a single day. So this sounds cool, but what are the concrete advantages of org as code? Well, we don't even need to use our imagination too powerfully here. because all the advantages present in DevOps and in our philosophy and tooling as far as software management accrue here as well. Through org as code, we can have and create organizational Legos, which allow us to do things like create plug and play business models, have design patterns. This blows open the entire creative space of business development by consuming it under software engineering. By taking this path, by taking this direction, we can create libraries of repeatable structures and processes. All of this allows us to do greater experimentation because just like with software deployments, if something goes wrong, there's a rollback mechanism. We can do business testing where certain ideas are deployed to limited participants, and if they don't meet desired ends, then it goes back to the way it was before. Or we can do segmented rollouts, just like what I mentioned earlier about the billions versions of code, of applications that are tested, and if certain desirable ends are met, then it rolls out to all users. This gives us unprecedented business transparency and traceability. We can do static analysis of mechanism design. It's really hard to even wrap your hands around what's possible by going this direction. It's as big and orders of magnitude bigger than what has been made possible by API first thinking and design. I am 100% convinced that this approach will produce an unprecedented golden era of organizational design. So, a few challenges of programmable organizations. Now, traditionally, persons who wanted to enter into partnership with one another needed to register with a state entity to create contracts and open business bank accounts as that entity. Now, this barrier helped incentivize founders to incorporate, which helped states collect taxes. But the possibility of creating community-controlled treasuries and self-enforcing smart contracts without the need for third parties has opened all kind of regulatory questions. Where is this organization incorporated, a purely digital organization? What kind of organization is it? What category does it fall under? How should it be taxed? How can it be taxed? How should it interface with other traditional organizations? Now, these are all open questions, granted, but I would hate for these questions to detract us from the magnitude and the importance of the development itself. We can't let these legal questions detract us from the promise of the technology. I'm convinced that sovereign states can and will compete with one another to offer the most favorable legal frameworks and conditions for these digital organizations to incorporate with them. Because these digital organizations will invariably need to interface with traditional organizations and manage physical assets. And so it's just a matter of making those frameworks available to them. So lastly, I want to leave with you this broader global trend, and that is the time to $1 billion valuation is shrinking across all companies. Just like with software, creating a web page for a single individual, maybe they can do that without source control, maybe. But as you grow and scale in participants, suddenly it becomes not just impractical, but impossible to do so. In a similar way, with the speed of startups, the speed of business, it's going to become infeasible to operate businesses in the way that we have in the past. The time to unicorn status is compressing from decades to years and now to months in many cases. you see the fastest of these mentioned on the slide here is less than 2 months. And these aren't cherry picked. Last year produced more unicorns than the previous 5 years combined. And it's not just how quickly companies are reaching unicorn status, but even the ones that are unicorns, how big they are in fact growing, to the point where people are having to come up with new names, such as the $10 billion valuation, a dragon, and inventing new terms. Now, what's tremendous about the DAO construct is the new, not just the speed, but the kinds of organizations that'll be possible, because human coordination will have been brought into the orb of information science. If our software creation and delivery has accelerated as much as it has in the past 20 years, where could our solutions and businesses be? Solutions to human problems. Where could they be 20 years from now? It's not just the size or the speed or the kind, it's the quality as well. Too much human suffering and man hours are spent in failed coordination. We can mitigate that and eliminate that through programmable organizations, and DAOs are the key. Like I said, my name is Justice Conder. If you want to know more about me, you can find out at my website, justiceconder.com, or 0xjustice.xyz. That's what I go by in the DAO space, or follow me on Twitter at SingularityHack. Happy to talk and ideate on where all this is going. And this talk would not be complete without this quote from Mick Kirsten. In 2018, his famous book, Project to Product, he said this, that those who master large-scale software delivery will define the economic landscape of the 21st century. I'm convinced of this. This is already being proved to be true. And the path to solving this is going to be programmatic, as it has been in all the other areas. Thank you.